Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I am like kind of on the way to go get ready for work, but it's the 15th today and I don't want to wait another day before telling you about all of the books that I have read so far this month, because there are quite a few of them. I have read 6 Newberys. I have all 5 prompts fulfilled, plus 3 other middle grade, plus 2 non-middle grade books. So what is that? That's 16 books. I'm 1 ahead for reading a book a day. Very pleased about that. I have a drive later today and I will be able to read an audiobook during that drive. I'm in the middle of a graphic novel and I'm confident so far that I'll be able to complete my challenge of reading a book a day. So I debated about how to talk about these books. I think what I'm going to do is go through the 5 prompts, but what I'm not going to do is talk at all about the 6 Newbery books that I read. I will link my Newbery weekend vlog down below. If you missed these, I'll just tell you what they are. Call It Courage by Armstrong Sperry. Sounder by William H. Armstrong. Oh, how funny. They're both Armstrong. A Gathering of Days by Joan W. Bloss. Ginger Pie by Eleanor Estes. This year's winner, The Eyes and the Impossible by Dave Eggers, which I really loved. And Good Masters, Sweet Ladies by Laura Amy Schlitz, which I also really loved. These 2 were definitely my favorite of the weekend. But if you want more details about those, you have to go watch that video. Okay, for the 5 prompts. I was informed during a live reading sprints the other day that this Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus by Dusty Bowling was her debut novel. So this is my book for reading a debut. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4.5 stars. In it, we follow a young girl named Avon. She is in middle school and she was born without any arms. So in this book, we follow her along. Her family moves and she has to go to a new school, make new friends. She had a group of friends that had known her whole life in her old school. So they were used to her doing things like eating with her feet at lunchtime and just the different ways that she found to get things done that she had worked really hard to do. All of her friends at her old school and the rest of the school was just used to it. So upon moving to a new school, she feels really kind of uncomfortable about eating in the cafeteria. She's bullied a little bit, lots of stares, lots of kind of questions about her body and how she does things. And it's just really tough for her until she meets a couple of friends who also feel a little bit on the outskirts of something. One of these friends is a boy with Tourette's syndrome, and the other is a boy who's a bit overweight and Black. And these 3 become really good friends. And I love the friendship in here. I also really love Avon's parents. This was just a fantastic contemporary. I love Avon herself and her spunk and her determination. It just was a fantastic read. So good. 4.5 stars for that one. My book for an animal on the cover could be multiple books that I read this month, but I'm going to count An Elephant in the Garden. It's in the title and on the cover. It's by Michael Morpurgo. It's historical. Takes place in Dresden in the midst of World War II. The dad has gone off to fight in the war. The mom works at the zoo and things in their town get more and more precarious. And there's an elephant at the zoo whose parents have both died, and elephants are very emotional. And the mom brings the elephant home to their garden and they kind of take care of this elephant until it gets a little bit older. In the meantime, the elephant goes chasing after a dog one day through the park, and then their town starts getting bombed. And so they don't even return to their home. They just continue from the park to escape the bombings that happen in their town. It's freezing cold. This is a great wintry read. It's so cold. And we just follow this family, a mom and her 2 children, a brother and sister, as they try to escape and find barns to stay in and try to find places to stay, try to find food. It's a really kind of a survival story as well. And they also have to try to avoid soldiers along the way. So it was pretty intense. It was a super quick read, just a little tiny book. I really loved it. I also gave this one 4.5 stars. I think maybe 5. I don't know. Just last night, I finished reading Fever 1793. This is my 1-word title. There's a number in the title, but it just has 1 word. But if people get finicky about it. I also read Sounder, which is a one-word title, but I'm counting this as my one-word title. This is another historical. It takes place during the yellow fever outbreak in Philadelphia in 1793. We follow Maddie. She lives above a coffee shop with her mom and grandfather, and the three of them run the coffee shop. But then the fever breaks out in Philadelphia, and it is rampant. It just spreads so quickly, and it doesn't leave anybody untouched. So in this book, Maddie's mother gets really sick and tries to send Maddie and the grandfather to a relative out in the country. Things don't go as planned along the way. The grandfather gets sick, Maddie gets sick, like everybody gets sick along the way. Maddie makes her way back to Philadelphia, back to town, back to her coffee shop. She's in search of Eliza, who was their cook and friend. It just is Maddie's story of how did she survive this pandemic. It was fast paced. It was intense. I didn't love the audiobook narrator as much for this one, but I did really enjoy the story. So that was a great historical read as well. I also feel like so many people have read this. This was on my Christmas book exchange book. So I'm really glad that I got that read this month. My book for a refugee or immigrant story was Nowhere Boy by Catherine Marsh. This was my first 5-star middle grade of the month. I absolutely love Catherine Marsh. I loved The Lost Year by her, which was historical. This one is more contemporary, and in it we follow Ahmed, who is a refugee from Syria. They land in Belgium. And he's kind of on his own at this point. The attitude of the town in Brussels is a little volatile. Like, not everybody is thrilled about all the refugees that are coming in. Max is a young American boy. He and his family have moved to Belgium. Max, he's going to a local school, a French-speaking school, and is not thrilled about it. He's having a hard time fitting in and learning the language. And then Max and Ahmed meet, and Max, I just loved Max's character arc throughout this story. I loved the friendship between Max and Ahmed. I loved the twists and turns of the story along the way. I just found this to be a fantastic read about refugees and about the different attitudes of different cities and countries. It had a lot of important things to talk about, and Catherine Marsh's writing is fantastic. 5 stars. Love, 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 loved it. And then the book that I feel like I missed out on last year, I feel like tons of people were reading Rain, Rain by Anne M. Martin. I bought it last year, but I just did not get around to it. This was a super read. Our main character, Rose, has ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, and she loves homophones and she loves her dog. She purposely named her dog Rain because it has multiple homonyms, Rain and R-E-I-G-N and R-E-I-N. She is quite a character. I really loved the uncle in this story. The dad was a single dad and really struggling. I tried to have compassion for him. He wasn't always the kindest man, but I tried to just understand that he doesn't really understand his daughter at all, but he also didn't really try to, but he was trying to provide and trying to do the best that he could. So thank God for the uncle, because the uncle in the story was fantastic. The school was like a lot of it takes place at her school and in her classroom, and her interactions with her teacher and her aide that she has and some of the other students. And then mainly about Rose and her dog. There's a huge storm that sweeps through their town, and in a lot of places flood. And there's a lot of things that people have to experience, that Rose experiences, and the dog goes missing. And so Rose is on the hunt to find Rain, her dog. I really love, I love the character of Rose. I love seeing her thought process. I did read this in print, and I did not particularly love that every time there is a homonym, the homonym is put in there in parentheses, but that's just how her brain worked. Like, she automatically would hear or think about the homonyms, and she had a list of homonyms that she was keeping. And it just was a very cool look at a person with autistic spectrum disorder and in school and how that affected her. And it brought tears to my eyes towards the end. I thought it was heartwarming and lovely. And I gave it 4.5 stars. Fantastic. Fantastic. stinking tastic. Okay. I have 3 more middle grade that I read. I'm trying to go quick so I can finish getting ready for work. Oh my word. Probably the first one that I read of the month, I listened to the audiobook of We Still Belong by Christine Day. Christine Day is an Own Voices author. She writes about the Upper Skagit people tribe, and which is in the Pacific Northwest. And this story, We Still Belong, is about a young girl who is part of the Upper Skagit people. And she writes a poem for her paper for Indigenous Peoples Day that gets put in her school newspaper. She's so excited about this. Her whole family is excited about it. She thinks she's going to earn extra credit from her teacher, which he normally does, and allows the students to talk about their work that's in the paper on that day. So she's very excited to talk about Indigenous Peoples Day and her poem, which was called We Still Belong. And things don't quite work out as she expects. The teacher is kind of a jerk. and it's just about her finding her place within her family and within school. It kind of has a first crush storyline in there, but it was so appropriate for middle grade. Like, it just felt so realistic. And she's in a gaming club after school. It was very contemporary, very school focused. But I loved that it's Own Voices. I loved the emphasis of Indigenous Peoples Day. I loved that towards the end, we get to go to a powwow and kind of see the scenery, like some of the things that happen at the powwow. It was a sweet story. It was nothing like, it's not going to become a new favorite or anything, but I did really enjoy it. So, and I would definitely recommend Christine Day. Her writing just draws you right in. Then another contemporary that I read was Feathers by Jacqueline Woodson. Partly I picked it up because it is pretty short. I'm aiming for 31 books this month. But also because the top line of the back is hope is the thing with feathers. And I knew that this book was going to focus on hope. And it does. It's another contemporary that takes place in a school setting. This one definitely deals a lot more with race situations and bullying. Franny is our main character. She has a friend who is becoming more and more religious and starts talking a lot more about God. And there are bullies in her school. And Franny's just trying to navigate middle school in this story. A new boy comes to town who people question a lot of things about this new kid, and he then just by his presence starts making people question things, and he asks deep questions, and Franny and him become friends. Just as a simple little story that I thought was really good, and it definitely talked about hope at the end and why do we have hope and what can hope help us with, or what's the importance of hope, I guess. I think I might have given this one 3.5 stars. I can't remember exactly, but I don't really remember it too much. But I know Jacqueline Woodson's writing is always beautiful, and it was a good story. And then the last middle grade that I'm going to talk about is Show Me a Sign by Anne Claire Lizotte. This is a new purchase for me. There was a few people that read this last year that I remember. When I read the synopsis of this in my February book haul, I was so surprised because I don't know that I knew this is what it's about. This is like an early settlement in Martha's Vineyard, like early America. Martha's Vineyard was a place where there just was a high percentage of deaf people. I don't know if it's still that way today, but back in early America, that's just the way it was. And our main character is deaf, and what's her name? Mary. And she always kind of felt protected and loved on her island. Then this doctor comes to town, stays with the preacher, and this doctor is rude and ignorant and thinks that deaf people are stupid and can't be important members of society. And he wants to do studies on them and why there's a high percentage of deaf people in this area. Pretty intense. And I was not prepared for that. When I was just kind of thinking about this book, I didn't realize how intense it was going to be. But I definitely really, really enjoyed this story. Very cool. And then I have 2 books that I read that were not middle grade. So the first one I read early in the month was The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This was on my January TBR. And I think I've mentioned in other videos, I am keeping books out that I put on a TBR but didn't get around to, and hopefully working them in as time goes on. So I did read The Unmaking of June Farrow. This is about a family of women who have a curse on their family, and June Farrow, who is determined to be the last person that experiences this curse. She wants to make it stop. And so to that end, she does not plan on getting married. She does not plan on having any children, especially girls, because it just goes from woman to woman in this family. I thought the writing of this was beautiful. I thought the story was beautiful, and it involves a time travel situation, which I did not know. I'm not going to say more about that because I thought it was fun kind of going into it without really realizing all that it was about. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. Very, very good. Very good. And then finally, I read African Town by Irene Latham and Charles Waters. And this is the only other 5-star read I gave this month. This is a book told in verse. And from multiple different perspectives about the ship Clotilda, which was the last ship to come to America with enslaved people. And we follow these people in Africa, in their towns in Africa. How did they end up getting kidnapped or taken to the ship? About their passage over to America, about what happens to them once they're here, being sold into slavery on the different farms. Many of them stayed in the same area, and then creating African Town, which, like, once slaves were free after the Civil War, a group of people from the Clotilda, from this last ship, who are now family and related and married and all love each other so much, like, because of their shared experience and their desire to go back to Africa. And then they end up creating their own town called African Town. It was infuriating and heartbreaking. It was very emotional. I loved the audiobook of this. It was a little hard at the beginning to keep everybody straight because there are quite a few characters. So I did have to kind of come back to it and read along with listening just until I got an idea of who each of the characters were. There's so many of them. And it was hard to keep straight at the beginning, but it did not deter ultimately from the importance of this story and how good it just was really, really, really well done. I loved the author's note where she does talk about African Town and that it's a real place and what parts of this were based on fact and what parts were imagined. She gives you an actual, like, the characters in the book were actual people. So yeah, just the author's note of a historical fiction is always just so amazing. But this one was really good. Definitely a 5-star read. And I think it was a Patreon pick. Like, one of my patrons recommended this to me, and I'm so glad that I read it. So glad. So these Newberries, well, I'm going to set those down, plus all of these, plus We Still Belong, which is the only one that I don't own, are all of my reads for the first half of the month. I'm rocking it. I'm loving Middle Grade March. I always love it every year. It is honestly the best time of the year. So I would love to hear from you down below. What has been a 5-star read or one of your favorite reads so far this month? How are you doing? Are you hitting all the prompts? If you're able, join us on Wednesdays over on the Middle Grade March channel for lives. This week coming up will be just a chat. I would love to see you over there. And that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out. And I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.